Hello, this is Dr. Gear, and this is Chapter 5 on Placement and Induction, the lecture that accompanies that PowerPoint. The chapter outline is on slide 2, and as you can see, Rebor's writing deals with placement, induction, technology, and the impact of Generation Y. And as has been the past, I will elaborate on some of Rebor's points and also share with you some of my own perspective on these items. As well, at the end of the lecture, I will be discussing the midterm. I'm going to the next slide. Slide number 3 is on placement. And Rebor points out that there should be policy that clearly identifies the role of the superintendent in assigning staff. I would add to this that oftentimes this is a clause that is in the contract of a superintendent that he or she has the right under contract to assign personnel as he or she sees fit. One of the things that I would caution you about when you are dealing with the issue of placement is that any type of transfer or change in personnel alignment should be thought out very carefully. And oftentimes, what on the surface looks like makes a logical and may make sense in terms of moving someone around or some other such personnel change has some kind of unforeseen ripple effects. And I'd like to just point out to you, the whole idea in social science of black box, and simply that is that oftentimes inputs go into a black box of policy, process, procedure, and they come out on the other side as an output. That oftentimes there may be some form of unforeseen effect. So one of the things I would caution you about is when you're making these types of decisions is try to think them through and eliminate as many unforeseen variables as possible. One of the things that Rebor points out in the PowerPoint is the impact on morale of placement issues. I would point out that this generally is routed in what I would say is a human propensity to not like change very much, especially for veteran teachers who've been in a room. They have a certain comfort level with the subject area or curriculum, grade level, other colleagues, the principal. Any number of issues will make them uncomfortable with change of a change of placement. Just a quick review on change theory. One of the things that I would have you think about as you do change placements for people is that basically you're unfreezing a situation. You're going to make a move and refreeze it. And that's a good metaphor or mental model for thinking about change. One of the things that you should consider when you're doing placement changes is this going to be incremental or is it going to be a wholesale change? In other words, are you going to do small steps to get to the end over a period of time, or will these be wholesale change? Both models have their advantages, and obviously a discussion of change theory is beyond our parameters today. One of the things that I would say to you is if you're in a situation where you're going to do a large change, and oftentimes placement is involved with those changes, and oftentimes placement is the large scale change in your school. Use external and internal conditions to facilitate that change. In other words, are there things happening outside of school or inside the school district or school that frame rationale and logic for what you as the school leader may be proposing to the staff that is making them uncomfortable? Let me give you an example. If people are being laid off or there's staffing cuts, generally the culture as a whole is not going to be too concerned about tinkering with the master schedule. By that, those small changes in light of people losing their employment pale. So my point in discussing this with you is when you get into a situation where you need to do some type of wholesale change, and oftentimes placement is a piece, or as I mentioned previously, is the big change. Think about how you might be able to tinker around the edges of other areas to move your organization forward, and you can almost do this as kind of a smoke and mirrors. Not that I advocate that this is an ethical way to do business, but in terms of the discord or the disjointedness it would bring to your organization for some small change, sometimes it's better to kind of to institute this type of change when other large things are going on. And as I've mentioned several times to you, placement is one which will really catch your teaching staff's attention. Rebor points out the impact on morale of placement issues. One of the things that I always questioned was, is morale ever good? I'm not quite sure, because even if somebody would articulate that they thought conditions in the school or the organization were good, there was always a but statement. By that I mean, but there was a place that needs more, or there's a place that needs less, or there was always some type of condition. So obviously morale will be impacted by placements. If you change personnel, obviously morale will be affected, and generally it's a negative effect. However, to minimize the impacts on morale, let me give you a couple things you can do. First is to make sure that you're communicating as soon as possible the reasons why placement changes are being considered. You may even want to bring together a group to discuss and study the changes that you may need or you may be ordered to facilitate, in order to come up with a plan for communicating those changes, for perhaps minimizing their impact. Oftentimes you can get some good feedback from your staff in this type of collaborative committee, ad hoc committee on placement changes that will facilitate less disruption of your school culture. One of the things that I think often will be helpful is, and I have alluded to this, is to make sure that you communicate well the rationale behind what has to happen. If this is a budget issue, certainly people understand that. If you've got a number of retirements in a middle school team and you need to bring veterans in to a team that's going to be decimated by retirement so that you don't have all greenhorns on one team, people understand that, but it's important that you as a school leader impart that information to the staff. And the earlier that you can do that, most likely I would say that's good. But be careful about sending it out too soon, so that there might be external factors that may again make more changes occur. So you have to time this rather judiciously. The other thing that you can use to back up the rationale behind placement changes certainly is data on student achievement, employee profile data, and so on. As I mentioned previously, for instance, if you have a team where there's a lot of retirements going to happen, obviously people are going to see that and understand it. Rebor talks about a grievance procedure for people to be able to express their discomfort or their discord around a placement change. One of the things that I would point out to you in a non-unionized environment, that in a unionized environment, a grievance means that there is an allegation that the written contract between the association and the superintendent has been broken. However, that is not the case, certainly in states without teacher associations and unions that are strong. So what Rebor also was talking about is having a sounding board for people to be able to articulate discomfort with placement changes. A couple of things to think about is how can the transfer be appealed and how, and this whole procedure needs to be communicated well or it can cause a lot of confusion and also could give rise to people trying to circumvent the chain of command. One of the things that I would suggest to you that you need to keep in mind and always be thinking about as you think about transfers, placement of new people, or the transfer of candidates within your school, or not candidates but staff within your school, is keep in mind that you always have certification issues, and in some states obviously you're going to have tenure issues that you're going to have to deal with and seniority issues that attend teacher unionization. And I will leave it at that. I am now going on to the next slide. Induction. Induction is a very important component of the employee-employer process. And the reason that I say that is that you need to keep in mind that this is likely the introduction of the employee to your organization as an employee rather than as a candidate for a position. And the reason that I bring that up is that you are going to have one opportunity to make a first impression upon your employee. As such, make sure that your induction program is well planned and organized. It sets the tone for the employer-employee relationship. I believe induction is two-pronged in its approach generally. The first prong is philosophical, the second being nuts and bolts. Philosophical, you're starting with the big picture. What you're basically trying to do in your induction program is to set the big picture. What is it that your school or your school district is all about? Well, obviously there should be some common themes. It's all about the kids, it's all about student achievement, it's all about student achievement, and it's all about student achievement. You want to discuss with them opportunities for teacher leadership, the idea of collaboration, that you are a team, a family, and that they are the district along with you and others. So they need to be able to think of themselves as part owners of whatever happens within that organization, and as such take responsibility for being a good steward of the district to the community, parents, and students. Secondly, we start with the philosophical. Obviously, that's the big global picture. Then we winnow that down over time, all the way down to nuts and bolts issues. Everything from getting staff IDs taken, giving them their keys, what's their copier code, where do they go to get paper, how do you order pencils. All of this should be covered through the induction program, all the way from all of those very what we would call minutia type daily activities, all the way to the philosophy of the district or your building. One of the things that Rebor introduces in the chapter, and I wanted to underscore this, is the idea of taking a tour of the district and or the scope of operation of a school. And I think that that's a very valuable tool, and one that we employed in my last district. It gave the teachers a chance to see the neighborhoods from which their students would be coming from, and gave them a feel for the scope of the size of the district. And obviously in the case of some districts, it's going to be more about the neighborhood of the school, What does the community look like, to get a sense of the demographics, and as such, it is a very valuable use of time. Just to give you an idea, in the last district where I was superintendent, we had a 5-day induction program. Started with the first day with generally global and philosophical things and ideas. I would start out by addressing the new staff and talk about the expectations from a district level. But that can, over time, that was 2 days of district level training and various things, all the way from philosophy to ethics to how to use some of the technology, benefits, payroll, you name it, everything that we could think of that an employee needed to know, they would get in those 5 days. 2 of the days, and generally it was a morning afternoon kind of organization. In the afternoon, the principals would run a building level orientation so that the new teachers at those levels could work with their principal, and the principal would certainly train them in various expectations at the building level, things that were germane to each of the buildings. One of the things that you might want to think about is, as you organize these induction activities, you have an opportunity to provide training for your other staff as well. So if you think about that and organize it well, there could be pieces of the new teacher orientation that other staff may want to take advantage of. For instance, say you're giving them instruction in how to use a new software package to fill out report cards. One of the things that you may want to do is to make sure that you give an opportunity for other employees to take advantage of that training as well. And you'd be surprised about how many will take advantage of that opportunity. One part of induction that is often overlooked, or its importance is downplayed, is how do you introduce your new staff to the building and at times to the whole district. They're a new face. This is a place for them. They're feeling, nervous. There's anticipation. They're in a new place. There's lots of change involved. So as a school leader, think about how you can help facilitate someone's ease in coming into such a new experience. And one of the things that you may want to do is think about how can you symbolically bring somebody into your fold, so to speak. And for instance, I oftentimes would have a small gift as a principal or as the superintendent to give to my new teachers or new staff. In my last district, when I was superintendent, I would have them come up and I gave them a small pin, which was the district crest that they could wear on their suit lapel or their blouse or dress. It's a nice little personal touch and makes people feel good about you as their employee. Employer, that is. I'm going on to slide number 5. Reboard talks about some levels of induction. I'm going to elaborate on the last one, the school building and program at the principal level. I've talked to you somewhat about that previously, and we're going to talk about mentoring in a second, but I would like to pose an idea to you to put away for use when you become a principal or when you're using the induction time at the district level. This is a great opportunity to get your support staff involved, to have them help train the new employees, the new teachers, in things like where do you go to get copy paper. That's the place where you're building secretary and all of the things that she or he is in charge of, to make sure that they have an opportunity to kind of go through some of the nuts and bolts questions, frequently asked questions that a new employee will have. And actually, it's a great idea to have custodians do that. Also, sometimes food service to just give them an opportunity to put a face with a new name, and for the new people to know who some of these other leaders are in the building. And it gives the employee who is delivering that training a real sense of value. So it's an area that I would pose to you as perhaps an opportunity for some training. I'm going on to the next slide, and this is about mentoring. Um, One of the things that I would elaborate on beyond what Rebor talks about in the induction section, which he does, I think, a comprehensive job, is that mentoring programs are a good opportunity to have a collaborative team work together, a team of teachers and administrators. And one of the reasons I bring that up is that that was a system that we used with success in both my principalship and as a superintendent, and it involved forming a committee that was in charge of assigning the mentor-mentee relationship to set that up. And the strength of this was the setting of ground rules at the beginning, the idea that this group had to trust each other. And one of the major ground rules was that since we were dealing with personnel issues, that obviously anything that was talked about in this committee needed to stay there. And the power of this particular committee was that teachers know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And as trust grew and the conversation became more candid, oftentimes teachers had very cogent observations and gave great feedback and input into matching up mentors and mentees. One of the things that especially stands out from some of those conversations over time is the role of physical proximity in that mentor-mentee relationship. By that I mean that it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a mentor in one building or way at the other end of the building, way far away from the mentee. The physical proximity facilitates conversation and contact between the mentor and his or her protege. One of the things that I would suggest to you, though, is if a mentor gets paid, the committee gets a little more dicey as people begin to introduce into the decision making the idea of pay and self-interest or interest for one of their friends. I wouldn't say that it's a great issue, but it's something that at times I felt was there. One of the things that I would also suggest beyond what Rebor talked about is that you have a series of set meetings during the school year for the mentors and the mentees along with administrators to talk about things that are going on. It's a great opportunity to elicit from the mentees or the mentors things that need attention in terms of perhaps some professional development. The other being that it gives an opportunity for evaluation of the mentor-mentee program, and it was a good opportunity to just check in with oftentimes your first year hires. One of the things that I would suggest is that you require mentors to be trained so that there is a common ground by which all of them are operating. And the whole confidentiality issue is one that you need to continually stress in this particular relationship. On the last group meeting of a mentor-mentee year, what we would also have the participants do is to fill out an evaluation of the program. Now going on to the next slide, number 7, technology. Just a couple of items. Something that you could do is to set up a listserv for new teachers. I've heard of that. I've never done that personally, but it could be something you could do with new teachers and their mentors. Um, Obviously, there is the use of technology for professional development, and that's beginning to really catch hold. And I think you're going to see more and more use of that as you would have an opportunity for asynchronous staff development away from the workday, much like what you're doing right now with this course. A couple of things about technology is that I would suggest beyond this whole induction is, or during inductions, make sure that new employees are aware of the acceptable use policies for technology in the district. And a new thing that's coming up is, the whole proper use of social networking, Twitter, Facebook, those types of social networking opportunities can give rise to some questionable uh, interactions between teachers and students, in that it's not during school time. I'm not sure. I still think that there's value in that, and I'm not discouraging the use of that, but I do think it's something that needs to be explored, and there needs to be at least building level, if not district level, policy on the use of these social networking sites. Another thing that I would suggest that you talk to your new inductees about when discussing technology is that they need to keep track of professional development hours, and do that using an Excel spreadsheet. That will come back to be something that they will use probably at various points in time for lots of different applications, even the writing of a resume that you just completed. The impact to Generation Y, I don't have anything to add to what Rebor presented there. In terms and he talked about their openness for collaboration and embrace change more readily. And I'm not so sure that's part of their generation, or whether or not that's a function of their age, quite frankly.